Ruth said, "Where you go, I will go," to show that love anchored in loyalty defies fear and uncertainty. Naomi urged Ruth to stay in Moab, but Ruth clung to her to reveal that true devotion persists when everything else fades. "Your people shall be my people," Ruth declared, to show that faith builds bridges stronger than bloodlines. "Your God will be my God," Ruth affirmed, to teach that choosing faith means surrendering comfort for calling. Together they walked into Judah to show that sometimes God's plan begins with a quiet yes in the face of grief. They left Moab behind to show that trust in God sometimes means walking away from all we've known. Ruth's vow echoed across time to remind us that love sealed in sacrifice births eternal legacy. The people of Bethlehem watched their arrival to show that strangers walking in faith become part of God's promise. Naomi said, "Call me Mara," but Ruth's presence began to restore her joy, proving that faithful love can revive broken spirits. Ruth's journey began with a choice to follow love, and through it she stepped into the story of redemption. Ruth gathered leftover grain behind the harvesters to show that humble diligence invites unseen favor. Boaz asked, "Who is that woman?" to show that unseen acts of kindness never go unnoticed by God or man. The workers explained Ruth's loyalty to Naomi to highlight how faithfulness creates a reputation that speaks before we do. Boaz told Ruth to stay in his fields to show that divine favor often begins with unexpected invitations. He ordered the men not to harm her, showing how God places protection where purpose is pursued with integrity. Boaz said, "I've heard all you've done for your mother-in-law," to reveal that our quiet sacrifices echo louder than we imagine. Ruth bowed and said, "Why have I found favor in your eyes?" showing that grace is often met with humble awe. At mealtime, Ruth sat with Boaz's workers and was served generously to show that divine hospitality includes those who feel least worthy. Boaz instructed his men to drop extra grain for Ruth, teaching that God's provision is both intentional and abundant. Ruth returned to Naomi with an overflowing bundle to show that faithful labor, met by grace, always bears fruit. Ruth washed, anointed herself, and dressed to approach Boaz at the threshing floor, showing that preparing with purpose opens doors to favor. She came quietly and uncovered his feet while he slept, to teach that bold faith sometimes speaks in silent gestures. Boaz awoke startled and asked who she was, revealing that even righteous hearts can be surprised by divine timing. Ruth said, "Spread your garment over me, for you are a redeemer," showing that humble requests rooted in truth carry great power. Boaz praised her kindness for not chasing younger men, reminding us that integrity often begins with the quiet choices of the heart. He promised, "I will do for you all that you ask," to show that God honors bold trust placed in the right hands. Boaz said, "There is a nearer Redeemer," to remind us that divine processes often include unexpected delays in order. He gave her 6 measures of barley to take home, proving that even in waiting, God sends provision and peace. Naomi said, "Wait, my daughter," to teach that after acting in faith, patience allows God's plan to unfold. Through quiet bravery and sacred trust, Ruth set in motion a destiny greater than she ever imagined. Boaz sat at the city gate and summoned the kinsmen to show that wise redemption starts with lawful integrity. He presented Ruth's case to the nearer Redeemer to show that transparency honors both truth and legacy. The kinsman declined the offer to redeem Ruth to show that not all opportunities are meant for us, but God reserves the right ones. Boaz declared his intent to redeem Ruth before the elders to show that honorable choices shape eternal legacies. The elders witnessed and blessed the redemption to show that when we walk rightly, community affirms the calling. They proclaimed Ruth like Rachel and Leah to show that faithfulness rewrites forgotten names into honored history. The sandal was exchanged to seal the deal, showing that divine agreements often walk through earthly customs. Boaz took Ruth as his wife to show that redemption is not just rescue, but restoration to joy and belonging. Naomi watched the blessing unfold to show that God's providence redeems more than one story at a time. A family line restored at the gate to show that when God redeems, he rebuilds futures in full view of the world. Ruth gave birth to a son to teach that humble faith can bring forth unexpected blessings. Naomi held the baby close to teach that shared joy heals old wounds. The neighbors announced a son's birth to teach that God restores hope through faithful lives. Naomi cared for the baby to show that new life renews purpose and identity. The infant grew strong under loving care to teach that faithful nurture shapes future generations. The boy became a father to teach that small acts of loyalty can build lasting legacies. His line rose to royalty to show that God elevates the overlooked into places of honor. The family tree was recorded to teach that every faithful step counts in God's grand narrative. God wove humble loyalty into his plan to show that no life is too ordinary for his purposes. A legacy was born to teach that steadfast devotion can echo throughout eternity.